Okay, here comes the introductory music, and then I will see you on the other side. So here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Good Listening To Show, your life and times with me, Chris Grimes, the storytelling show that features The Clearing, where all good questions come to get asked and all good stories come to be told, and where all my guests have two things in common. They're all creative individuals and all with an interesting story to tell. There are some lovely storytelling metaphors, a clearing, a tree, a juicy storytelling exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, some alchemy, some gold, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, and a cake. So it's all to play for. So yes, welcome to the Good Listening To Show, your life and times with me, Chris Grimes. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we shall begin. Oh, yes, indeedy doody. Welcome, thrice welcome to the lovely Angie McQuillin here in the Good Listening To Your Life and Times with me, Chris Grimes, the Story Behind Your Story podcast. This is Angie McQuillin, who is a kindred spirit. She is a confidence and career success coach. Angie McQuillin, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is a special Brand Strand episode of the podcast where I like to help amplify the personality of the brand, the story of the individual concerned. Who are you? What do you do? What's your purpose? All that sort of stuff. You will be able to speak, I promise, in just a couple of minutes, but just to contextualise and blow a bit of smoke at you, I noticed you on LinkedIn as being very prolific and a bit of I perceive you as being a bit of a LinkedIn influencer. You have a particularly enigmatic way of sometimes laying out what it is you want to talk about. And I was really struck with your lovely dynamic of having a flip chart and then the film speeds up. She did some really, juicy content, really helpful content and very compelling content. And I just thought, gosh, this is someone who does something similar to what I do, but I just really enjoyed the cut of your jib in how you lay out the path of what you do.
Sure, thanks.
And we've been in conversation for several months, and I'm really happy that we finally arrived in the Good Listening To Clearing to find
My
out.
last working day of the year for me. This is it now. After this call, I'm done. I've just got a couple of emails to send, and then I'm switching off for Crimbo.
Switching off for Crimbo. That's a bit like the track Going Home for Christmas. Switching off for Crimbo is the new Angie McQuillin Christmas single. Let's do that. So yes, thank you for squeezing in before you went off for your Christmas holes. Also today I was introduced through your most recent post to to Louis the legend, your pooch, your majestic pooch.
Oh, he's so cute. He's actually here now. He's just sleeping down to the side of me. He works with me all day. He just lies there really silent. The only time he might bark, which is unlikely, is just if there happens to be a delivery, which isn't impossible around Christmas time. But then he'll go nuts for about 2 seconds and then he'll stop. But that's the only time he barks.
Lovely. So that's a beautiful segue, by the way, into my first question, which is what's your story of the day? How's morale? And just what's going on for your day today?
Well, basically today I'm in slowdown mode because today is the last day that I'm going to be working officially for 2021. So I'm in high spirits, should we say. I mean, obviously there are some bits and bobs I'm going to do just for some content creation, maybe put a couple of posts out on LinkedIn over the Christmas period. But as far as clients go and proper working or any business development, then that's all coming to a complete close as from today. So it's a good feeling, actually. Feels nice to be slowing down and stopping.
Wonderful. And also we have Bristol in common. I happen to be based in Bristol. Our geography, I don't quite know exactly where you live in Bristol, but we sort of share the commonality of sharing geography as well.
Very nice.
Also, you've been intriguing over the months that I've noticed what you post about on LinkedIn. You talk about rollerblading. You also do wild swimming. So there's obviously quite a lot of, I perceive you, if I may, just to blow a bit of extra happy smoke at you, you're a bit of a warrioress because you do love the great outdoors. Even your background now is you in the long grass, as you said. Did you,
Yes.
you use the expression, I always like to be in the long grass. Just tell me a bit more about that.
No, well, I just kind of made that up because you commented on in the weeds. So I just use it as a phrase, but it's actually roller skating rather than rollerblading. Not a massive difference, but it is a bit more retro on the roller skates. But yeah, anything that's adrenaline based, whether it's speed skating or when I say speed skating, I don't do it professionally, but we go down to the bicycle track, and we just, put our foot down basically, and ramp skating a little bit, and roller derby, which is my favorite, which is quite an aggressive sport. And then tomorrow, for example, I'm going away with a friend for the afternoon to do some wild swimming. We're going to take our her stand-up paddleboard. I'm going to go in probably without the wetsuits. Probably, I don't know. It's not that cold at the moment. It's around about 8 degrees. It gets really cold in January when you have to literally hit the ice in the water for you to actually move through it. So that's pretty tough. But anything that's fun and outdoors, I'm all over it.
Fantastic. And as I say, warrioress, go you. Fantastic. And so I'm going to take you through the journey and the route map of the Good Listening To podcast, which is going to feature, you're welcome, a clearing. We'll find out what that is for you, metaphorically or literally. Then there's a tree. Then we shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. And this is the exercise of the 4, 3, 2, 1 that you've been kind enough to take 5 minutes to prepare. Then there's some alchemy, some gold, a couple of squirrels, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, and a cake. So it's all to play for. And Brand Strand also is, just as I say, to help amplify your brand and take you to, you're already awesome within LinkedIn, but this is going to sort of help hopefully take you even further, which is what this is all about. So let's get cracking. Do you have any questions before we start?
No, I'm sure it'll all make sense when we get going with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and squirrels and cake, but let's just roll with it.
Let's just roll with it. And everyone's thinking, hey, this is the podcast with the squirrels in the tree. Where do the squirrels come in? Listen up and it will become clear. So Angie McQuillin, this is all taking place energetically within a clearing, which is my first storytelling metaphor. What is a clearing like for you, literally or metaphorically? Where do you go to get inspirational, clutter-free and able to think?
It sounds a bit of a cliche, but I spend some time every day, at least an hour outdoors walking Louis, basically. So whenever I'm just got that clearance of space and I'm just there with my dog and in nature is often where the ideas occur to me of something that I want to do with my business or something I want to do in my private life or anything like that. So I find that if you just spend a lot of your time just in the same seat, in the same environment, although I've got a fairly big office now because I've moved into the master bedroom in my house, it still feels it's the same 4 walls and I need to have a different environment to create a different space in my head. So that's it's a bit of an obvious answer, but that's probably the biggest one because I do spend a lot of time dog walking and walking through fields and forests and whatever. And I also obviously do some, well, say obviously, but I do some meditation as well. So sometimes that can be, and it isn't always that's where the ideas comes from, but often you can declutter the mind, which then frees it up for extra space for new things to emerge within the mind. So I find meditation quite powerful as well. I need to be more religious at it. I need to do it more frequently, but I do it somewhat frequently. And every time I do it, I do pretty much recognize the benefits of it.
There's that lovely Nietzsche quote, which is the best ideas happen outdoors, which you may or may not have heard of, but also if in doubt, walk it out, which is another really nice expression. So I find that very relatable.
There is another weird thing that I've experienced a few times where there's a very, I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but there's this very small window of time when you're falling asleep where you're kind of conscious, but you're kind of in the sleep zone. And just at that moment, you're really tapping into your subconscious because your conscious mind is beginning to shut down and your subconscious is beginning to be more active, or not necessarily active, but more present because your frontal lobe is beginning to become a bit more muted. And I purposely keep a little pad of paper and a pen next to my bed because sometimes just at that, I don't even know how long that period of time is, but there's been a number of times where just at that point of dropping off, something will occur to me. And I'm like, oh my God, where's that come from? I've got to write it down so I won't remember it tomorrow. So sometimes I wake up with notes that I've thought, oh yeah, I remember that from last night. And it's just this weird phase between going to sleep and actually sleeping where sometimes new ideas come to me, but it isn't planned. It just seems to happen. So I purposely capture those thoughts with a little, pen and paper next to my bed.
You're in good company. Apparently Sting apocryphally wrote Every Breath You Take, which is probably the most downloaded song on the planet, apparently, because he just woke up from a dream state, whomped it onto the paper, and the rest is history.
Amazing.
Interestingly, relatably, sleep rhythms and patterns, some of my best ideas don't happen then, but happen about 4:30 in the morning. And the sleep rhythms of the pandemic have been particularly challenging. But actually, I have most of my epiphanies relatably to what you've just described at a sort of later point in the rhythm of sleep. But I love the fact that you're totally present in that sort of hinterland, the twilight between as you say, dropping off, which is lovely.
Well, it has its pros and cons, right? Because obviously you get the idea, you get excited about it, you write it down, and then
Yes.
you're wide awake again. You're like, God, I've got to try and get back to sleep again. And that isn't always something that I'm very good at. So, yeah, so it has its pros and cons, but it's useful when it happens, but it can be a bit of a pain in the arse as well.
Again, I find that very relatable because it's great that I have my epiphanies at X time in the morning, but actually it also comes at a cost for the next day because of being a bit effed in the barnet,
Sure.
because of the rhythms. So we can either now go outdoors to a specific place of your choice where I'll turn up with a tree to shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. Or you've got me quite excited about the idea of doing it in this energetic space between wake and sleep. So what would you prefer? Where would you like me to arrive metaphorically with a tree?
Let's go apples and trees. I don't know.
Okay, so we're in the great outdoors, and you can be as specific as you like. You've talked about paddleboarding through the ice, you said as well, but where would you like to go? And if I could intrude with my tree, I'm going to arrive with my tree to shake it.
Where would I like to go? Is that literally in terms of my business or just worldwide?
Go feral. Go wherever you like.
Okay, let's go to Thailand.
Ooh, okay, and again, that's quite a big ponytail pinning in a map. Where in Thailand are we, please?
Let's go to Krabi. I've been there before, and that was very nice.
And is that Krabi Island? Or I'm going to say Krabi Island. I'm showing my ignorance from geography here. So is Krabi an island or a place or a?
I think it's, oh my God, it's definitely a place. It's got lots of smaller islands surrounding it. So
okay,
let's not get like detailed on the geography because my geography is horrendously embarrassing.
Yes, we nearly got both embarrassed with the same dash on the rock of geography there. So here we are in Krabi Island in Thailand then, the great outdoors with Angie McQuillin. We will talk about what you do, by the way. I know obviously you do confidence boot camps as well, which is a lovely expression and very clear and compelling of itself. So as we go through, there'll be a deliberate invitation for you to go deep into what it is your purpose is, and that's where the alchemy and gold comes in later. Yes. So here we are, Krabi Island, and here I arrive, a bit waiting for Godot-esque, metaphorically, with a tree. And I'm going to shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. So this is the 4-3-2-1 exercise. You've had 5 minutes to have thought about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention. And here come the squirrels. That's the borrowed from the film Up. That's a bit, the squirrels, what never fails to grab your attention and distract you, whatever else is going on. And then finally, a quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't know until you tell us. Mm-hmm. I've given you a lot of information, but let's go back now. 4 things that have shaped you as we begin to enjoy you shaking your tree in the canopies, please.
Sure. Okay. So I was aware that you're going to ask this question. It's really difficult to pinpoint very specific things, I think, because I think it's been such a long, drawn-out process through any form of self-development. I think the occasions that have really shaped me is, first of all, living in a world that is very, I wasn't living to my true purpose and I wasn't living to who I truly was. So that was quite a painful experience in my younger years and in my 20s and even into my very, very early 30s. So actually having that experience of knowing what it is, what it feels like to live in that way of being and not being honest with yourself, not being honest with the people, people pleasing, not being assertive, not being terrified of what people think of you, it really makes you play small. So then obviously getting into coaching was a huge, like flip my life around, literally upside down and back to front. But now I've got the experience of knowing how it feels differently to not live in that way. And that just, although that's 2 big clumps of time, they're hugely different. And that was absolutely huge in terms of how that shaped me, because I see the world differently now. I connect with things differently. I have different measurements of success. I have different friendships. I have different beliefs about the world. And it's completely changed my personality to a degree. In many ways, there's still a lot of similarities. Like I'm still an adrenaline junkie. I still love dogs. I still have these more superficial desires and parts that I haven't changed. But the person who I am, how I communicate and what I stand for and what I believe in and the choices that I make in my life are completely different than they were before. And that has to only come through experience. And I think the benefit of that is that when you've lived in a world of fear, where you're pretty much fearful of everything, you're fearful of what people think, you're fearful of conflict, you're fearful of just, success, you're fearful of failure. There's so many things that I didn't realize at the time that I was carrying shame around or just fearful of doing something. that fear that you kind of get used to then also helps me where I am now, because if I ever push myself outside the comfort zone, naturally by our DNA structure, that fear kicks in again. But I'm a lot more resilient to fear now than probably the average person that maybe hasn't gone through a fearful past, because I know that it's just a fear and it's just the emotion, and I'm okay to go with that, because I know at the end of whatever I'm doing, I'm going to develop from it, regardless if it works or doesn't work. Just the experience of doing something that's a bit scary is very developmental. But having had the experience of living in fear and then being willing to go into that fear and know that it's part of the development, I'm more resilient to it because I've been there and I've done it and I've experienced a lot of that already. So that is huge in terms of the decisions that I make and how I go about running my business, what friendships that I choose, the things that I do in my private life as well. So that's one massive thing, or two even massive things. What other things have shaped me? I think, again, on that journey, when you start stepping into that space of self-development, you go through experiences that you can barely believe that you've just accomplished. And those just continue to expand. So one of the main reasons I got into coaching about a decade ago, whatever it was, around about that, was to become more assertive, because I was just I would just appease everybody and everyone for anything, just to avoid the conflict. And I didn't even know how to word it. I didn't know what choice of words that I wanted to use. I didn't know how. I was just like a doormat for everything. But I put on a very, very good front. So I was always been quite extrovert, but anybody that would have known me would have thought, there is no way that she's an unconfident person, or there's no way that she's, not assertive. And actually I was hugely inassertive or unassertive, whatever. So experimenting with being assertive. Now that doesn't mean being a jerk, and it doesn't mean saying anything that's cruel to people. It just means holding a boundary and understanding what my boundaries were, recognizing when I was unintentionally crossing other people's boundaries, and also being aware of when people are crossing mine and holding that. And it doesn't mean about being aggressive, it doesn't mean about attacking people. But since I've held firmer boundaries, it just gets easier and easier and easier to be assertive. And the moments that have shaped me is every time I've been willing to do that in the earlier days, when it was bloody difficult to do it. And now it's not difficult to do it, but it's what's really interesting is in those days, because of the lifestyle that I led and because I didn't really have boundaries, people will cross them because you allow them to do it. So first of all, people don't know where your boundaries are. So inevitably people are crossing them unintentionally, sometimes not out of malice. But even if they do know where they are, if people are that way inclined, they will cross them because you allow them to. But interestingly, since I've been able to express what I want and what my needs are and what I like and what I don't like, and with ease now, I just don't get people crossing the boundaries in the same way. So something that I've now built is I can protect myself if need be. I very rarely need to protect myself because I get a lot more respect from people, because I lead my life and communicate in a completely different way from the get-go. So that's been a huge thing, just understanding that. So again, it's not something there was this one time when this one thing happened. I mean, I can draw upon those specifics, but it would then belittle the actual journey and the importance of the development that sits underneath that. And then I think the final thing that shaped me is, since I've got into spirituality, that's been a relatively new thing for me over the last, maybe when I was about 37. So it's been I'm 41 now. So it's been over the last, say, 4 years. Before then, I was an avid atheist. And I don't consider myself religious, but I do now believe and understand that there are, and it's been proven with science, this isn't just woo-woo stuff. You listen to Joe Dispenza and it's nearly impossible to argue against. But understanding that, everything is about energy, and every experience that we have is energy based, and every feeling we have is energy based. Everything, the way we communicate, the way we hold ourselves, and everything that we're faced with is energy based. And when you see the world through a looking glass of energy, as opposed to just this pure 3D sense that we're just lumps of matter that walk around on planet Earth, it shifts everything the way you see it, and it changes my interpretation of a lot of things that happen. And I think it's just taken me to a new level of self-development. So that's been massive for me, actually.
And by the way, the clarity in your boundaries sounds really profound and liberating. That whole adage of, we educate people how to treat us, and the law of reciprocity, what you give out, you'll get back. That's really profound. That was an extraordinarily powerful riff on the things that have shaped you.
Well, that's kind of the high level detail, but where it impacts you on a day-to-day basis is the relationships you have with people, the relationships you have with your family, the relationships you have with your partners, the relationship you have with your friends, and what type of friends you have. So I've still got a few friends that I've been very, very close to for a number of years. Like my best mate I've known since I was 10. I'm he's still my best mate now kind of thing. But through that time and that development change, lots of people that were kind of the things that held us together, that glued our friendship previously, aren't things that I now resonate with and connect with. So therefore they've tended to drift away from my life, and new people have come in that I have much deeper relationships with, and that's been very fulfilling and rewarding. So although boundaries is kind of like the high level detail and people understand it, the impact on how I hold myself at work when I used to be in the corporate space, the impact of how I choose what decisions are going to make around running my own business, the friendships that I have, the partners, there's not millions of them, but anybody that I start dating is very different from somebody that I would have dated when I was 20 or 25 or something. So my decisions of my life decisions are all connected to the decisions that I make, which are connected to boundaries and a view of my own self, which is very different to how it used to be.
Yeah, there's a real evolution into self-awareness and more acute self-awareness in this. And I just love the fact that you're now much more boundaried and you're much more able to state your truth without unwarranted doubt, and you're getting more energetically from it because you can do that.
Well, I'm literally obsessed with truth and honesty. Like for me, it was almost like it was born into me or something. It's like even from such a young age, it's been very, very important to me. It's very, very highly ranked value for me.
Yeah.
But that's a very interesting point, because when you can hold firmer boundaries, you have more freedom to live in your own truth. And often if that clashes with other people's opinions around things, you then are on the receiving end of other people's judgments, other people's opinions, other people's beliefs. And that then if you don't, and you're not able to hold the boundary on that, and you're still able to carry your path and your truth, that's when people get derailed to live in their own truth. And that's why it can be so soul crushing. So although, again, boundaries is the bigger picture, what it means is that I have freedom to just be who I want to be and speak how I want to speak and hold myself in my own power in the way that I want to, rather than being riddled by fear or riddled by judgment or riddled by what other people might say about it or whatever. So it all has a knock-on effect. You're just building your own strength and building in your own growth.
And if I may, here you are in the clearing, holding yourself with your own power. And that's a really majestic thing, actually. I would commend you very highly for that. That's fantastic. Hurrah. So we're still in the canopy. We may have covered, there's profound shapage there. Would you now like to talk, you can say more about that, or would you now like to talk about 3 things that inspire you?
Let's go to inspired. Sure. So 3 things that inspire me. It's always going to come down to people. I don't often get inspired I'm not materialistic. I'm not driven by materialism. So when other people might have like a really flashy car, I actually do happen to have a very nice camper van, but I'm not driven by the material side of it. It's just very comfortable and I spend a lot of time in it. I don't really talk about it much, but I have amazing weekends away in it and my dog loves it and we have a lot of fun in it, kind of thing. So I'm not driven by materialism. I'm not driven by how much people earn. I'm not impressed by people's titles. I'm not impressed by people's incomes. I'm impressed with how people hold themselves. So an example of somebody that I'll say that I'm literally inspired by is, most people on LinkedIn might even know her or know of her. It's a lady called Shay Rowbottom. So she has, I don't know, between 750,000 followers because she creates incredible content. But actually, I know Shay personally a little bit. Like we're on WhatsApp and we send each other the odd message, and we've had a Zoom call together and blah blah blah. But the way she leads her life and how she's got so far so young is incredible. And I mean, with her self-development, she's incredibly honest and authentic about her story and her background. She's shameless about the things that she does. She does get a lot of haters because of her success, and she's beautiful and she's got pretty much everything going for her. But I don't feel jealous about that at all. I find that incredibly inspiring. But what I love about her the most is that she's so willing to be her, regardless of what other people say. And it works in her favor. She's running a multi-million-pound business. Her inspiration around her business isn't driven by the money for me. It's more driven by how has somebody built something so incredible at the age of 27, 28. But also with the way that she leads her life, the decisions that she makes, the way that she won't be derailed if she has a belief around something that she's truly done her own research on or her own work into, and what she believes about something, she will stand by that regardless of the hate that she might receive. And she'll also have a lot of people supporting her simultaneously, but she's happy to be a person. Like I always use the phrase, I would rather be loved by 2 people than liked by 15 people. Like I don't want to be a number 6 or 7 for 15 people. I'd rather be really close and really, connected to 2 people. And I think Shay kind of takes a similar approach from that, but she's done it to such an enormity that I think she's incredibly inspiring. She's an example of somebody, but it's the way she holds herself and the decisions that she makes and her values that I'm inspired by. And all these other things are just kind of byproducts of what she's achieved in the process. But I'm inspired by the person rather than her business necessarily, if that makes sense.
It does. So Shay Rowbottom, you said, is that right?
Yes. She's a I would put her, I wouldn't consider myself an influencer, but I would consider she is. You know, she has a huge following and she does, you know, she really good stuff, and she does a lot for the content and helping people as well. And she's very funny. She makes me laugh.
And there's a lovely through line there about connection and energy and reciprocity. And, you know, there's again, it's coming back to state your truth without unwarranted doubt. And you know this, we will have lovers, we will have haters within that domain. And it's all about clarity as global heads of ourselves, which is really trailblazing.
Sure. So I guess other things that inspire me are my actual clients, literally. So it doesn't matter what they're doing and where they are in their own journey. But when somebody takes a move forward that is self-development based and they go against their own old rule book that historically they've adhered to that hasn't been helpful for their own confidence, when I see my clients taking, you know, steps, it doesn't matter if for them it's to say no to somebody or if it's huge, like setting up their own business or whatever, like it's, as long as it was a big step for them, that's what inspires me. And it keeps me accountable for myself, because I can't help these people in that particular way and they're not lived by the same kind of principles and everything. So I find just working with my clients, and you know, I'm not going to say his name, but I've worked with a guy and we finished yesterday was our last appointment together. And the changes that he's made over the last few months has been jaw-dropping. And, you know, he actually welled up at the end of the session saying it's been amazing for him. It's been life-changing. And just to see the changes that he's made, and it hasn't actually all been about his career. He has made some changes in that too. But the way he just sees the world is different. His level of honesty, he's being brave, he's being courageous, he's doing things that he never dreamed of doing before. He's taken up new hobbies that he's always wanted to do that he hasn't actually given himself permission to do. And it's just been an absolute delight to work with him and see that transformation in that journey. And when I see that with my clients, it's incredibly inspiring, even though their story is very different to my own. So I'm always inspired by what is in front of me. So I love the work that I do for that particular reason.
And if I may ask, what's been the sort of timeline of that journey arc? It's not about speed, but in that relationship, what was the arc of him arriving at your portal of your Zoom hole or whatever it might be, and then now you've helped him?
Sure. So generally I work with a one-to-one client for around about 6 months.
Well,
So
yeah.
that also, I mean, sometimes it's just a bit longer if, you know, there's clashing your holidays or somebody falls ill or there's a Christmas holiday or a summer holiday. So sometimes it can be a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But on the whole, it's a 6-month process with my one-to-ones.
And what a wonderful, energetic moment to drop the mic on a really successful client, you know, that you can have stuff mounted in the metaphorical foyer before you go off for Christmas.
But it's, I mean, he's just an awesome client. We laughed a lot in the sessions as well. So we had a lot of fun together, but you know, he isn't an anomaly. There's lots of people that have similar stories. And that's what I find, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. That's what excites me when people tell me that they're more connected with the children, that they have a deeper relationship with their partners, or they're being more assertive with the bully in the office, or they're taking actions that they've wanted to do for years, but never really had the balls to do it or whatever. And now they're doing it. That's what excites me. I'm not excited about the payment time or, you know, like getting the contract out there and securing a new client. That stuff is probably the part I need to probably be a bit more bothered about, actually. Like my business coach often tells me that as well. It's like, oh, I'm not bothered about that bit, but he says, well, you should be. It's like, yeah. But what bounces me out of the morning with excitement is seeing those changes and seeing people's stories when they get back to the sessions and they say, oh, I've been doing this, or I've done that, and I took action on this. And I'm like, it's brilliant. It's just
like that. You want the shiny stuff, not the boring stuff, which is great. Wonderful. So that, again, wowzers, all tickety-boo. We're moving effortlessly, seamlessly through. Now, let's talk about two things that never fail to, squirrels, grab your attention. What are your monsters of distraction?
Oh God, can you expand on what you exactly mean on that? Because there's so many, I'm so easily distracted. Everything.
Yes. Well, shiny. So what will always never fail to grab you in your tracks? So sadly, in my life, it could be like a ping pong table. Just the sound of kapinky pong will make me go, squirrels, and I'll see if I can beat the person in my head. So
Okay.
what never fails to grab your attention? Squirrels
Uh,
and up.
the obvious one is dogs. So I've got to say it. Like if I see a dog, I'll chase it down the road just to give it a little stroke. And I'm always, obviously I work, but I play tug of war as often with my own dog. But I'm inspired by my own dog as well, because they're just, if humans took the values in which dogs live by, we'd all be so much better. Like they're so loyal, they're so loving, they're so affectionate, they're always happy to see you, they're incredibly patient. They have so much love to give. And if we could just actually, and they live in the present, they don't hang on to grudges. Like I've seen my dog, it's very rare, but occasionally he falls out with another dog, and then 2 minutes later they're running around, just playing with each other, and they just forget. They don't hold grudges in that way. So we're just, and they're not bothered by things, how good they are. So for example, Louis is terrible at catching tennis balls. I think he's caught maybe 3, and he loves it. It's his favorite thing in the world to run through a wall for a tennis ball. But I think I've seen him maybe catch 3, and every time he does it, I'm really excited and clapping, like, well, I do. But literally, he gets so many tennis ball throws every walk, and I've only ever seen him catch like
I'm
3
obsessed with tennis, so that's completely landing in my court. I love that. So Louis is a bit of a legend, and is he a rescue dog? Is he a puppy dog that you nurtured to a full dog?
No, he's a rescue. So, but what I love about that is that he's obviously not attached to an outcome. He's not attached to how good he is. He's not attached to the achievement, because no matter how bad he is at catching tennis balls, he'll always go and chase one and play with it again, and he always loves it. So they're just they live in the present. Do dogs, like there's, I guess some of them carry trauma, etc., obviously, but on the whole, they're a very present animal, and I think humans can take a lot from that. So yeah, I'm always distracted by dogs. I mean, if something pops up on my screen on LinkedIn and it's a dog rescue thing, I'm normally got tears in my eyes and I'm commenting, or I'm donating or something. I'm an absolute sucker for rescue animals, and particularly dogs.
My ancient acting teacher at the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School was someone called Rudy Shelley, and he always talk about watch a Great Dane, because they're always saying, sorry, I'm so big, sorry, I'm so big, sorry, I'm so big. And they're always apologising for being clumsy. But also dogs have the wonderful power of now. And so that's what's so lovely about their presence. And your connection to Louis the legend. He is a majestic pooch. I have to say, I saw him for the first time this morning. I was thinking, boom, that is a dog right there.
He wasn't very happy in that picture. It was a little bit of had to play with him a little bit to get him G'd up, and then just grabbed a picture when I could, but it wasn't an easy. He doesn't look very happy. He's like, what the hell is this on my head, for God's sake? You're trying to humiliate me in front of 30,000 people.
Well, not many people appreciate how much the dog is smiling or not. But anyway, that's good. We'll look at it again now. Why doesn't Louis look happy? It's because he's
he had a hat on. He felt a bit humiliated, but he does have an incredible staffy smile. He's got the biggest smile when he's just sat in a field or something with his tennis ball in front of him. So, and I actually call him the global head of tennis ball operations. That's his official. He's my business partner as far as I'm concerned.
Say that again. My global head of what?
Tennis ball operations.
Love that. Tennis has been one of the saviors of my pandemic, so this is all very relatable. So good on you, Louis. That's all good. Louis the legend. Okay, so that's Louis that's distracted you. That sort of covers that. Is there anything else that never fails to grab your attention?
A good success story. So when I see people turning their lives around, I'm always drawn to that. So I read a lot of self-development books, and just because I'm fascinated by the psychology behind it and people's different stories, and and whether it's on, I don't really want to name one person as such because there's so many out there, but whether you're reading maybe a book on somebody's horrendous childhood and then what they've done with their own lives, or people I've worked with as business coaches, even they've got really hideous backstories and then they've just turned their life around. People that have broken really bad habits, whether it's an addiction of some kind, people that have gone through a hell of a lot of trauma or abandonment issues when they were children and then managed to find themselves a really beautiful, loving, caring partner and everything. And I just think that's inspiring, because that wouldn't have happened easily. Nobody comes from a place of trauma or uncomfort or discomfort, or just a place where they're unhappy and then just wakes up and goes, right, I'll just do it this way, because the brain is often programmed in a way to carry forward those patterns. So when somebody has broken those patterns and they've really got their stuff together, then I know that's taken a lot of work, and I'm very inspired, and I'm always attracted to reading more about that or understanding somebody's background. I'm a bit nosy into people's backgrounds because that's probably why I'm doing what I'm doing, but I can't help it. It's part of who I am. But I'm always drawn to those types of things, absolutely, and I'm always very supportive of it. I think it's very inspiring and definitely something that catches my attention.
So the quality of somebody's resilience and how they've broken through to get to where next is something that I'm hearing there.
Just the journey that they've had to go through and the resilience that they've had to undertake, the discomfort of doing things differently, the work that they've had to put in, probably the shedding of the tears, the shedding of the ego, the shedding of the beliefs. That takes a lot of work. You know, I've done a lot myself like that, and I've helped other people with the same thing. But, you know, everybody's journeys and stories are different, and nobody's is better or worse than other people's. But I know firsthand that takes a hell of a lot of work. So when I see other people doing it, I want to give them a pat on the back or a hug or whatever. You know, I just want to recognize them for that effort that they've gone to, because it does take a lot of work, as I've already said.
Lovely. And now the final question in the canopy of your tree is the final apple to crunch on, which is a quirky or unusual fact about you, Angie McQuillin, that we couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us.
I was born with no sense of smell.
Oh, have you developed one since, or do you still not smell?
Still don't smell. And then everybody always goes, how do you taste? Well, you can still taste the basics if you don't have a sense of smell, but I don't know any different. So as far as I'm concerned, food tastes pretty good. But apparently I have 10% equivalent to other people's, and that 10% is based on the standard 4 quadrants of your tongue. So the sweet, sour, salt, and spicy, whatever it is, I can't remember.
And how did you discover that?
Probably through school, actually, when somebody would fart and then everybody else would be like grasping the noses. And I was a kid going, should I be, like, as a very young kid, I used to be, oh yeah, it's terrible. And I'd just pretend to fit in. But then I started realizing that was a lie. I can't smell anything. And it never occurred to me.
God,
and
blimey,
then
some of the atmospheres you've walked through in your life. Awkward.
Well, it has its pros and cons, right? Because my knee pads for my roller derby and my crash pads, they are renowned. Everybody's renowned for getting very stinky, but I have absolutely no bother getting them in and out of my bag and putting them on or whatever. But it has its negatives as well, because I can't smell smoke. I can't smell, so if my house is burning down, I can't smell gas. I can't smell anything like that. So if there was a gas leak or my house is burning down, I wouldn't know till the alarms are going off or I saw it. So I have to have extra alarms, and I have to have, because a lot of people can smell something before the alarms would go off.
Yeah.
So I do actually have more alarms in my house, and I have gas detectors in my house as well, because I can't smell any gas. And obviously it has disadvantages if I am smelly for any reason. If I've been to the gym, I don't know how much I smell, but the person I'm talking to is probably struggling a bit. I don't know.
Maybe Louis will tell you. Maybe Louis is the one who'll nudge you when it's time for a bath or something. I'm kidding, of course.
And I guess the final test I was given was in the corporate space, when I was convinced that I could taste, because I didn't believe that it affected me in the way that it did. And I was proven with this test I was given a spoonful of cinnamon, and other people said it was so potent they couldn't even smell it because it was that strong. Yeah. And yet I took a teaspoon of it and just popped it in, and it was just like chewing on talcum powder. And that was the point when I was convinced, because everybody was like, how can you do that? That's so strong. I was like, I can't taste anything. There's nothing there. Well, so actually then it was very proven to me that I genuinely had an effect on my taste as well.
Well, you could be a YouTube sensation, because there's so many stuff out there about people trying to imbibe the chili, the ghost chili, or the cinnamon. And if you're going, then
you can still taste spice, but I can't taste the flavoring behind it. So it still burns my mouth, but it's like having a flame against my tongue, but there's no flavor to it. So one spice just tastes exactly the same as another. So it's just hot, but it isn't flavored to me.
And by the way, one of the most alarming things for people suffering from the coronavirus has been their lack of sense of smell and being knocked out suddenly.
Maybe I was born with COVID then.
So I wasn't trying to go there, but I just remember thinking that's one of the symptoms that people listen out for or watch out for.
It is. And to be fair, I think people that have lost the sense of smell, whether it's through a bad cold or anything else, if that never returns, that's worse for them, because they have the comparison. So they know what it feels like to have something and it's been taken away from them. Whereas I don't struggle with that, because I don't know any different. I don't miss £1 million because I've never had £1 million in my bank account. But if you were a millionaire and you had it all taken out, you'd probably notice it. So I can't miss something I've never had. So it doesn't actually bother me, to be honest.
Wonderful. So we have shaken your tree, Angie McQuillin. This is so lovely. So that was a thoroughly enjoyable sort of rummage through the foliage of shaking the canopy of your tree. So that's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise over and done with. Now we're still in the clearing, which we've said is Crab Island in Thailand, but we're going to move away from the tree, stay in the clearing, and we're going to talk about alchemy and gold now. You've been giving me that by the bucket load anyway, but the alchemy and gold idea, it's also called the diamonds beneath your feet. I don't know if you've heard the allegory of that. Have you heard about it?
I've heard of turning, obviously, alchemy into gold, but I'm not familiar with what you've just said.
The diamonds beneath your feet is another way of just it's expanding or expounding upon the metaphor. There's an apocryphal story of, and this is really relevant for anyone within a creative endeavour, an apocryphal story of a South African farmer where everything is turning to drought. You know, he's not farming drought, just to be clear, and every day he's getting fear of missing out, envy, because everybody else seems to be prospecting and striking diamonds in the rest of South Africa. So the fateful day happens. He thinks, right, I've had enough of this. My farm's turned to drought. Everything's dying. He sells his farmstead. Off he goes into the wilderness, haplessly and tragically. The person he sells the farm to picks up a rock, puts it on his mantelpiece. A few days later, someone comes around and said, cool, blimey, that's the biggest diamond I've ever seen. And they start digging, and those are the diamonds beneath our feet. And so it's often the idea that anyone within a creative endeavour, you've not been barking up the wrong tree all this time. The diamonds, if you keep digging, are beneath your feet, which then relates to alchemy and gold that are within our domain if we only look for them. And in storytelling, it's the silver thread that pulls us towards our future, the golden thread, rather, that pulls us towards our future. So anyway, convoluted, it's saying the same thing. Alchemy and gold. When you are at purpose and in flow, Angie McQuillin, Confidence Bootcamp, Currency of Confidence practitioner. What are you happiest doing? What do you like to bring to the world?
I think for me, I mean, I'm going to answer this from two angles. One is from a business perspective, and one like my work world, and one is from a personal perspective as well. But for me, when I feel most in flow is when I'm leading a group of people. Say I run a leadership group as well. It isn't the boot camp is one of the groups I run. I also run a leadership group too. But when I do like public speaking. I do like holding a room of energy, like maybe a workshop or something like that. But it's normally in a group-based thing. And one of the things that I love the most is inspiring people to communicate differently, because it's an absolute game changer and it has such an impact on your confidence, because most people hold back on what they want to say because they're worried about things like how other people are going to judge them and how they're going to be received or whatever. And also people don't always have the words of knowing how to go about that. So when I feel that I'm most in my flow is that I'm helping people go through and break down barriers that they've had for ages around how can they say this thing, or how can they do this thing, and how can they measure this thing in a particular way that is more helpful for them other than how they're going to be received by other people. And therefore they're able to go forward and take action on something that they haven't been able to take action. And as a result, that's where your confidence starts building, because the message your brain gets is I'm worth it. I'm worth fighting for. I'm worth doing this thing that I want. So I love those calls when I'm helping lots of people at one time. That I find that very, very rewarding. I prefer being in person than on Zoom, because I'd rather have the energy of a room full of people. So in the same concept, it would be maybe a workshop that I'm running live, maybe with a corporate or a group of people or something. And I always try and make it as engaging as possible. I don't like just standing there talking at people with a flip chart or something. I'll do a small chunk of content, then I'll engage with people, and it becomes very coaching based. I'll do a small chunk of content. But when I see people's like, and you can see the penny drop and you say, I get it. Yeah, that would be a game changer. And then next time you might see them, they've told you the story, how it changed how they felt about it, and they've got this massive surge of confidence from it. That's when I start feeling, that's what I'm here for, because it's just helping people be more honest. And so many people think they're honest, but they're actually not as honest as they actually might believe. So I have a different way of explaining how I interpret honesty, and then how people then adapt the way that they communicate into a high level of honesty. They start finding themselves more. They start connecting with themselves more, rather than being attached to connecting with other people more. And by default, they can connect with other people in a different way, because who they are and how they're showing up is a different person. So that's when I feel like I'm really, helping people the most, is when I'm talking about being more honest, being more open, being more vulnerable, all fall into the honesty category, be more assertive, communicating in a different way, using a different choice of words to get the same message across, but from a place of values rather than just probably the way that we've been conditioned to communicate in society. And when I see those changes that people make, I just get this sense. I'm so buzzing after a really good call that sometimes I can't sleep. It's just like the adrenaline's going around, and it's just this happy surge of, I bloody love that. Like I'm doing what I'm here to do. And that's really exciting for me. So that's one thing when I'm feeling most in flow in my workspace. And in a private space is when I've got wheels on my feet. It's as simple as that. When I've got skates on my feet, you put me anywhere. And You know, some of the best memories I've ever had is when I've just gone to a completely unfamiliar area, found a really smooth track, whether it's next to the beach or whether it's next to, you know, somewhere, not necessarily nature, because that tends to be a place that you wouldn't be able to skate on, but something with a beautiful view or something when I'm just there, like maybe in Barcelona, for example, or there's a place, I forget where it was, I went to France actually, but they're really long beach fronts and it's just this beautiful smooth tarmac. I put my skates on, I could spend all day just, and then you stop off, have a bite to eat, keep your skates on, have a little drink, and then skate back again. And you just keep going around and you can knock out very easily 20-30 miles. It doesn't take that much on a pair of skates. But when I'm doing that, I can blink and 6 hours can go. It's ridiculous, really, because I'm talking about roller skates at 41 years old, but it is so liberating just to have the wind in your face, your hair flying back, the sun beaming down, and you've just got these skates on your feet. That's, for me, incredible.
And I'm seeing all this sort of American crisscrossing going on. It's fantastic, really good. And no one's ever said that their alchemy in gold is when I've got wheels on my feet. I love that. Hurrah. And so now I'm going to award you with a cake, Angie McQuillin, for gracing us with your presence here in the Good Listening to Clearing.
What cake is it? Is it a carrot cake?
Is it a carrot cake? It's up to you to interpret. What cake would you like, please?
I'd like a carrot cake. That's my favourite.
It shall be yours. And tragically, I'm a tease because it's only a metaphorical cake, but it is a carrot cake. So now you get to put a cherry on your cake, which could be weird on a carrot cake. You can have a free carrot, whatever you want. And this is a final multi-layered carrot cake because this is where I'm going to invite you to talk about what's a favourite inspirational quote that's always given you succor and pulled you towards your future. Mm-hmm. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? And or what's the best what notes or advice might you proffer to a younger version of yourself? And I'm really struck with your timeline of how you suddenly took a new direction to re-engage and re-empower with your purpose when you changed your state, if you like, to be more confident. So that's that. And then finally, it's going to be inspired. This is where the Shakespeare comes in, inspired by all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. When all is said and done, Angie, I want you to work towards how you'd most like to be remembered. So this is about legacy at the end.
Sure. You're going to have to remind me of those one by one because I won't remember all of those. There's quite a lot.
So first thing, what's a favourite inspirational quote that's always pulled you towards your future?
Yeah, there's probably a couple. One is obviously everybody's heard the phrase of like, don't give up your day job. That's the one that we're all familiar with. I have seen on a number of different posts of what I've seen people say. I don't know who said it, but I love it. And it's like, don't give up your daydream. And that to me really resonates because so many people have a dream and they just have a dream. Other people have a dream and they actually live it. And that's very inspiring. So that's probably two, actually. So one is don't give up your daydream. One is many people have a dream and other people have a dream and actually live it. And another one is I'd rather be disliked for who I am than liked for who I'm not.
Alchemy and gold. Awesomeness. You should write this stuff down. This is great. Thank you for those. Pick one of those to just plant there again of the three.
I'd rather be disliked for who I am than liked for who I'm not.
Segueing beautifully, we're coming towards legacy. Now, what notes or advice might you proffer to a younger version of yourself, Angie McQuillin?
I think it would be more reassurance than advice because, I mean, unless I was going to sit with myself for a year or something and like help them through the different behavior changes. But the advice would be, or the reassurance probably, just everything's going to be okay. You know, you're not going to live in fear. You're not going to be living in a life that isn't going to be happy for you. So, and I had no idea what I was going to do when I was older. And I was just very programmed by all the traditional jobs, like we're kind of all told at school, like the ones that we recognize, like doctor, dentist, paramedic, police. And I was going to go into the police force for a long time. I chose that I didn't want to do that for more of a lifestyle choice rather than anything. I think that what they do is great and it still would be an exciting job. But if I were to go back to my younger self, it would be everything's going to be okay. Like you don't need to worry about the future. Everything's going to be absolutely fine. And that would be just hearing that when I had such lack of certainty would have been probably quite reassuring. And you are good enough. That's another thing. When you live your life for many years feeling that you're not good enough, to have been told that by my older self would have probably been quite a game changer. But you are good enough and everything's going to be absolutely fine.
And now, inspired by Shakespeare, and all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. When all is said and done, what's your legacy? How would you most like to be remembered?
I'd like to be remembered as somebody that has helped people become more honest and open and communicate with I don't want to say more impact, because it isn't about influencing other people, but communicating in a way that with more vulnerability, with more openness, in a shameless way. That's a big word that I use a lot. It's like I really promote shamelessness of who we are. And when we can let go of the things that we carry shame about, then we can't be shamed by anything, because you can only be shamed by something that you carry shame about. So like inspiring people to communicate with more open honesty, vulnerability, a shameless approach, and in turn creating deeper connections with other people around us. That to me is key. If you haven't got connection with deep connection with people around you, then it isn't going to have the same impact on you. So those things that come first, which is the communication, the vulnerability, the honesty, the shamelessness, have as a byproduct the impact to have very, very deep relationships with people, which then, I don't know, it's incredibly much more fulfilling as a way to live.
Where can we find out more about Angie McQuillin on the interweb, please?
I'm quite easy to find because everything is just my name, because I kept it simple. So my website is www.angiemcquillin.com. So that's original. Under LinkedIn, I'm Angie McQuillin, Confidence and Career Success Coach. On Facebook, I'm Angie McQuillin. On Instagram, I'm Angie McQuillin _coaching. On YouTube, I'm Angie McQuillin Coaching. So if you just Google my name, you'll find something very easy one way or another. So yeah, that's basically it. Everything's just under my name, any platform that I'm on.
And Miss Wheels on Your Feet, that was incredibly eloquent and beautifully positioned, and a really rich conversation indeed. As this is your moment in the sunshine, is there anything else you'd like to say about being here?
I love the sun, so I really wish I could have more of it. Anything else I'd like to add? I guess anybody that has happened to listen to this, then I think one of the key things I want to add is a lot of people seem to think that they try and think their way into confidence. And yes, it does come with an element of thinking about things differently, changing your beliefs and everything else. But if you're in a place of lack of confidence, by just sitting down and say you want to do something, I don't know, let's say you want to go for that promotion, just thinking about it and thinking, well, I'm not going to reply until I've actually got the confidence to do it. You're doing it the wrong way around. So a lot of people, they get stuck because they try to think the way out of a box. And I need to be more confident before I take action on this thing. It's recognizing where your comfort zone is, what the stretch point and where that starts. And then taking, even if it's in baby steps for now, just doing something to move towards what it is that you want to do. And that's where the confidence comes. So it's taking the action and the confidence follows. It's not staying stationary and hoping that the confidence comes before you take action, because you will stay stationary, you will stay stuck. So the analogy I give is, often people look at the bigger picture and think, oh, it's too much for me, I can't do it. And the analogy I sometimes mention is, if you're driving a car and you've never driven a car before, you might look at somebody else driving at 85 miles an hour down the motorway and go, well, that's just too much. Like, it's too many buttons and pedals and can't drive something that big at that speed. But actually, nobody gets in a car and does that. Like, everybody has to get in and do piece by piece. And if you're terrified of making that step, use the analogy of, like, maybe initially you just open the door, and then maybe the next day you put a foot in the footwell, and maybe the next day you just sit in the driver's seat, and maybe the next day you just put the key in the ignition but you don't turn it, and maybe the next day you turn it on, or whatever, and you build it up piece by piece, rather than just looking at the end thing and going, I can't do that. And by every time you just do that one thing that takes you closer to where it is that you want to go, that's where the confidence comes. And then that becomes easy. Then you've got the next challenge, and then that becomes easy, and it goes on. And eventually you look back now, you know, I don't know if you drive, Chris, but I do. I don't get in the car and think, oh, right, that's my brake. You don't do that. You just do it automatically. And it's exactly the same with behavior and confidence. But too many people hold themselves back because they look at the bigger thing and go, oh, I could never do that. It's too much. Well, actually, you have to do it piece by piece, and that growth. And that's why it's a journey on some of the bigger things that people want to develop about themselves. But don't think you need the confidence in order to take it. It's the other way around. Take the action, and the confidence will follow, and follow your own path on that journey, and it will change for you. Things will change.
The difference between what you want and what you get is what you do. It's the action towards that's so profound. So Angie McQuillin, it's been an absolute joy talking to you. This has been Angie McQuillin, I've been Chris Grimes, the Good Listening To podcast. Thank you very much indeed, and good night.